Hey everyone, Rel here from We Who Stitch, and I'm going to give you a very quick overview today on how to make the Over Everything coat out of our Remix modular pattern. So you're going to need the pattern for the Remix boxy top, and you're also going to need the extended mix pack, the add-on module. And if you want to have a long sleeve like this one rather than the 3/4 sleeve, you're going to need the full-length sleeve extension pack as well. So once you have all those patterns, you will be able to make, so this is the boxy top that I'm wearing as it comes with a 3/4 sleeve. It's cold here in Bowral today, so I've got something on underneath, but that's how it fits. It's very cute. The extended mix pattern is another block for the bottom to add onto this top, which gives you either this dress option, which is really beautiful. I'll show you a bit closer up. You can make a coat option, which opens up at the front. It opens up a whole lot of new things. You can also make a skirt then by taking these panels off the top and just using those for a beautiful elastic waist skirt. So there's lots of different options that opens up for you. We just did a workshop on the weekend for making this lined coat, so I just wanted to give you a really quick rundown how we went about that. Okay. Now this is just going to be a really quick run through. It's not going to be details of how to do things. It's probably for more of a rock star stitcher. It's not really a beginner thing, although if you can sew a straight line, you'd be able to physically sew it. It's just that you're going to need probably a bit more instruction. You may be able to battle through from what I give you here, but you might need a bit more detail. So the first thing we did when we went through the workshop is we got our sketch here. We had kits, we had our We Who Stitch and Loom Fabrics kits, which are curated kits which give you the fabrics that you need. I went a bit renegade. I chose a stripe and made it my own thing. You can do whatever you like. You can buy the kit of fabric from us, which comes with a few different beautifully selected fabrics that go together really well. You will still have the choice as to how you're going to lay it out. You can download one of these sketches off our website. It's got a back view as well. I've just traced the back view onto this and shown you. So what we did, and this is an example of some of the fabrics in our kits, all mishmashed actually. But so I planned out with my stripe, which you can see here, because of the boxy panels, I wanted to really show that off. So I wanted stripes going around here. I've cut my stripes and matched them up. So I've been a bit clever with this, and I've matched them down the bottom, and I've played around with my stripe direction. So that's one way that you could put this together. You could also just do it all in one fabric, just beautiful. Just the panel lines for interest is also a nice thing to do. If you are using a kit or scraps at home and you just don't know how to put it all together, a really helpful tool is to map it out like this and stick it down. We did have difficulties on the weekend. People were getting really confused as to right and wrong side for their panels. So if you have a clear working illustration like this, you can easily pick up your top back. And I know from looking at this picture here that my top back is going to be in this black color because this is my back and it needs to be that way up. And I know when I do this fabric here, it needs to be this way up. So it's a really helpful guide. Just take a bit of time doing it like this. Now the other thing we did do with these illustrations is pump it into ChatGPT. So we took some photos of the fabrics and we took a photo of this illustration just blank, and if you feed it into ChatGPT or your image generator of choice, I use ChatGPT and I usually give it a prompt that is something like, please take this illustrated sketch and put it on a model and use the fabrics that I've referenced in other photos so that you can get a nice bigger shot of the fabrics. If you just give it these little tiny scraps, it's a bit hard for it to render, but if you lay your fabric out and take a photo of the actual fabric, it will give you a better result. And then I basically say, ChatGPT, please take the sketch, please take my fabric choices and give me an illustration on a model with the coat, with the various fabrics where I have indicated they should go, and please make sure that the proportions of your rendering are the same as my technical sketch or my illustration, and put the model wearing some jeans and boots or whatever you like. It's going to come back and it's going to give you an interpretation. It's going to not be 100% accurate, but it is going to give you a really much better feel for what it's going to look like finished than what that well. So when you're cutting into your beautiful expensive wools, you're going to have a lot more confidence because your end result you're pretty clear on. So I totally recommend that you use some kind of image generating software for putting this together. It's fun. You can also say put it on a picture of me and make me look 20 years younger and 20 kilos lighter or whatever. No grey hair, no wrinkles, whatever you like. Or you can make you look older. It's fun. It's fun to do, and it really does help with the visualization process and gives you a clear end, like we know where we're going. It takes away a bit of stress, so it's a really useful tool. Great. So once we had our plan for where we were going to lay out our fabrics for our outside main body, the other consideration was whether or not you wanted to do a 3/4 sleeve or a long sleeve. I've chosen to do the long sleeve, so you just need to watch that when you're cutting as well. What we wanted to do, because this is a new pattern for most of the people in the workshop yesterday, was we're cutting out this pattern and all these beautiful wools. I'm talking, we've got beautiful cashmeres, beautiful quality wools. There was some dead stock European designer that starts with a CHAN fabric that sells for $70 a meter. So we didn't want to just chop into this and then it not fit, right? So what we did was we made the lining first. So we didn't cut any of the outside fabric yet. We just cut the lining and we sewed up the lining as a toile. And I'm going to show you how we did that. What we did with the lining is we just cut it all in one piece. So we take our, so to work out how to put the patterns together and cut the lining as one piece, you've just got to take your top, your lower top, and then also your extension. So we'll have 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3. I haven't got the extension piece right here at this second, but you get the gist. And then we have to join them together where they would sew together, right? So this pattern has a 1.2 centimeter seam. I'm going to show you down flat because it's going to be much easier. The other thing when you're cutting this is you really want to cut your pattern at least a size bigger than what you would normally cut, because you're making a coat, so you're going to be putting it over things, so you don't want it to be really tight when you're wearing it. So our sizing goes a regular size grade in the smaller sizes. In the larger sizes it does go a double size grade, so you might want to cut it in between, just go in between the lines. If you're not sure, just go a size bigger than what you think, because we can always make it smaller. So to cut our lining all in one piece, I've got here for the example the back pieces. So I've got my boxy top back, my boxy top lower back, and I have got my dress extension here. Now this is actually the same for the front and the back, and it's designed to go to the front, but just to give you a quick look, so this is my center grain line. I can tell that my sides are here. So the first thing we do is fold over our seam allowance here, because we're going to cut the back lining all in one piece. So we don't want to seam down it, we're going to cut it on the fold. I've already done that here. So my 3 pieces are sitting like this. Same thing's going to happen here. We're going to fold back our seam allowance, which is 1.2 centimeters or ½ an inch. Okay. So there's my pattern now on the fold, and what I need to do is join these 2 pieces together. So there is a little bit of shaping, but not enough to cause a big drama. If it's a little bit loose, the lining fabric's a little bit loose anyway, so it's really not going to matter. So what I'm going to do, because it's 1.2 centimeters, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can butt these 2 notches together like this. Good way to do it, and just pin it into place. You don't really want to sticky tape it into place because you're going to pull it apart again to cut the actual coat a bit later. And then where there's no notches, like this area here, if we measure 1 inch or technically it would be 2.4 centimeters, but we're just going to go 2.5 or 1 inch, because our seam allowance is 1.2, so 1.2 off here and 1.2 off here. And then we can pin that together there as well. Now, that might make this line a little bit crooked, but we'll just cut it reasonably evenly anyway. If it's a little bit out here and there, like I just said, it's really not going to matter. Now this piece is upside down because it's for the front and the back. It just happens for the back we need to do it upside down, but this is the dress extension. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to measure 1 inch or 2.4 centimeters, which takes me to this point here. I'm going to put it in its place here and pin it. Whoops. Where'd my pinhole go? And then the bottom of this has a slight curve. It's not a big deal. Just cut it straight. We're going to overlap it by 1 inch again here. Perfect. And pin it into place. So now you see I have one pattern piece for my center back. It's on the fold because my seam allowance is folded. And I can cut one back lining. What I'm going to do with the fronts is the exact same process. We're going to put the front, which will actually be this same piece again together. We also did tighten up the neckline a little bit. There will be a guide coming, a neckline guide, and it will just sit on top of this pattern piece, so you'll be able to bring the neckline in a bit, because the boxy top pattern has a reasonably wide neckline, and for a coat you could probably want it sitting in nice and neat. For the sleeve, you would do your upper sleeve and your lower sleeve the same thing, just cut one lining. And so then we're going to have one piece for the back, the two fronts and two sleeves, and we're going to just put the lining together and try it on and do fittings then. So you just want to straighten off that sleeve edge on both sides.
Here and there.
Yeah, perfect. Great, so once you've got your lining toile together, you're going to pop it on. You're going to check things like the neckline. Are you happy with how the neckline's sitting? Yes or no? Hopefully yes. If anything, cut it smaller, because you can always cut it off. Let's have a quick look.
Or should I want it inside out?
No.
Just do a twirl. Twirl in your toil.
Yeah.
Twirl. Imagine it.
Yeah. Matches. So once you've got your lining together, we want to put it on and just check things like the neckline. Are you happy with the neckline? You might want to trim it a little bit more open. The sleeve length, is it okay? Do you want it shorter, longer? The overall length of the coat, are we okay with it? Because the lining, we can recut lining if we need to. We can add a panel to it. It's not going to matter. You won't notice it from the outside. This is where we want to check the fit if you haven't used the pattern before. But you probably find that it's pretty good. The overall fit will be a bit looser than if you put on overclothes, because obviously it's a coat. So when we're trying it on and fitting it, we want to make sure we're doing it with the right situation. And once you have your fit right, if you want to make any adjustments, go right ahead and then translate those to the pattern, and then you can cut your actual pieces. So once you've got all your pieces cut, what you want to do is just lay them out in the way that they will be sewn together, and just make sure you are 100% happy with how they're going to sit. So I would lay the two fronts out, and then I would lay my backs out next to it, and even my sleeves. I kind of map it out how it's going to all join together. Just make sure that I really am happy with how that's all going to look. Did I make any mistakes when I cut it out? If I did, does it matter? Is anyone going to notice or care? Is it going to bother me? Do I want to change anything? Now's a really good time before you get too far into it. Once you have done that, what we're going to do is join the panels at the front. We're going to join this seam and this seam, and then this seam, and then this seam. Now, we really did get a bit confused in the workshop, and I think that was because we were in a smaller space and we were packing things up and pulling them back out, and pattern pieces were getting separated from pattern cut pieces. So because a lot of the pattern pieces are kind of quite square, and if you're not cutting the notches, it's hard to recognize which pattern piece is which part. So what I recommend is you always store your pattern pieces with the cut pieces folded together. I like to take the pins out because I often pick up work and I get pins stuck in me and it hurts. So I take the pins out, but I keep it all folded and organized so that when I do lay it out, I know exactly what I'm doing. The notches will help you. If you have cut it out and you get confused and you've got no notches, you've got nothing. But if you've got the notches, you'll be able to work out where it all goes by looking at the pattern. You'll know what part it is, because the notches on each pattern are different for that reason, so you don't get confused. If you have fabric that is like this Chanel's type fabric, it is going to be hard to see the notches. So that's where the pattern storage, being a bit organized, maybe just keep one pin next to it or pinned through so that it doesn't get mixed up. The less pins, the less pin pricks in your fingers. But yeah, that would be a big tip from our. And then when it's all laid out flat, like even if you lay it on the floor, if you haven't got room on the table, if you sew like one whole front, just get it sewn together real quick. One whole front, it's just 2 seams, it's easy. Sew that one together real quick, then you know where you're at with that. When you're sewing the back, because it's got this seam down the middle, we want to sew the 2 top backs together. Then we're going to sew the 2 middle backs together. So here, we're doing this seam first in the back. Then you're going to sew the 2 lower backs together through here. The reason we do this is it's much easier to then get this seam. If there's any discrepancies, it's going to be at the side here and not all higgledy-piggledy. We did have a little bit of discrepancy with our cutting when we were joining the sides and here as well, but you can usually jiggle it and make it fit. So yeah, what we did with the back when we were getting these junctions on a coat, because you've got 2 of them, it's even more important to get it right. We pinned our seam junction here, and then obviously our work was folded down. So if you imagine this work is folded down like this, and we've got our 2 seams, our seam allowance here, we pinned the seam junction, and then we started sewing from about here that way, and then we started sewing from about here that way. Now the reason we did that is so that our junction in between the 2 rows of stitching, we checked that the junction was right, so we didn't stitch it wrong twice. That way the seam junction should be beautiful, and any extra fabric is just going to be on the side. We can just trim it off if there is any. Sometimes you've got different fabric weights. We had one yesterday that had a bit of a stretch in it, a little bit of give. The Chanel fabric, even though we fused the back of it, it still has a bit more give than some of the other fabrics which are a bit more rigid. If you do have a fabric with a bit more give, it's much better to sew that underneath and have your more rigid fabric on top, because the rigid fabric will not get pushed along, whereas the more pliable fabric will get pushed along and grow, and you really don't want it to stretch out if you can get away with it. This really is an express class, isn't it? So you're going to have your backs then all joined. So you'll have 2 fronts, 1 beautiful back. Then you could do your sleeve join, 1, 2. The lower sleeve extension, it doesn't have a right or wrong side. It's a mirror pattern. It's just folded in half, so it doesn't matter which side it goes on. The only thing you will need to consider is if you do have a velvet or a nap pile, that your pieces are facing the same way. Okay, and then I'll come back for the next step.
Yes, that's perfectly modelled.
Just a quick note about seam finishing. Once you're joining your panel pieces for the coat, we didn't do any seam neatening on the inside. We opened all the seams, like ironed them open and flat. There's no need, if you're lining this coat, to do any seam finishing, because if you're doing it in a woolen fabric, it's not going to go through the wash. It's going to maybe be hand washed. If in a commercial garment that is lined, there's not usually seam finishing when it's all enclosed like this. It's not going to make it any less strong. You're not going to be shooting hoops, I don't think, in this coat. It's not, yeah, so there's no need to finish any of the seams unless you think they might really unravel. And so an example of that might be this Chanel fabric or tweed fabric that is very loose, but we did fuse that for our ones yesterday, so it should be all fine. Yeah, so all seams pressed open and yeah, flat open. Once you have your 2 fronts and your back, then you're going to join your shoulder seam, press it open. Then it's not the purists way. The purists would sew this seam shut and then sew this seam shut, but I don't do it like that. I sew my shoulders, 1, 2, then I sew my sleeve in. So you just need to make sure you get your back sleeve at the back, match up your notch at the top. There's a tiny bit of ease in this, but not much. You really don't need to do any, you should fit, it's just got a tiny bit of ease, which is nice. It just gives it a little nice shape at the neck. So I've got a really long piece and my sleeves are going in the side here. Then once the sleeves are in, I'm going to pin my underarm junction here, and I'm going to pin it out to the hem, and then I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to pin it down. So you want to make sure that all your junctions, seam junctions, matching. as best as you can all the way on each side. If you need to jiggle a little bit and ease any fabric in, if you take your panel, which is about this long, and you pin it halfway and have half of the eased fabric on each side, and then pin it again, and then sew with the tighter piece of fabric on the top, you will be able to ease any fabrics in. If it's really bad and you don't like that shortcut, you can just readjust this seam and unpick it to maybe halfway if that's where it needs to be, and just adjust it to make it fit and be the right length. That's another option, but we like to just get things done and be wearing it home here, so we just do it in the fastest way possible. Some people might not like that. That's okay. That's all good. So we will then have our shell of our outside coat all done and our lining all done. Now, what you're going to have to consider at this point is, do you want to put a facing on the inside? So it's going to depend a bit on the look that you're going for. It's going to depend a bit on the color of your lining. You can see on this coat here, I haven't 100% finished this. It does sit quite neat, but it might pop open like this a little bit. You could actually pin it down or tack it down and have it open like this a little bit if you wanted to. So what I chose to do on my coat is a facing in, it's actually a contrast fabric like this. Now this part was a little bit tricky, but there's a few different ways you can do it. Because our lining was already stitched together, what I did here was just cut a strip of fabric which was about 20 centimeters wide, and I stitched the fabric to the lining on the right side of the lining. When I say the right side of the lining, the inside, it's hard because you think that the lining is going to be in the other way, but it's not. I stitched it, just tacked it along the lining edge before it was folded in, and then I stitched it flat on this side. Now, if you had a fabric that was hard to fold and stitch flat like that, we also ran a bind tape over that edge and just left it flat. So the binding covered that raw seam edge and we just stitched it flat just through the lining layer. Then we pinned the neckline in its place, because if you imagine, I've still got a square of lining here. So I pinned it to the neckline of the original, sorry, I'm going to say that again. I still have a square of my facing fabric here, but my lining has the neckline cut. So what we did was pin the lining to the facing very carefully and then trim that curve in, and then just basted it into place by using a long straight stitch on our machine. Then what I did was just fold that top edge under in the shoulder seam. So it's a cheats way to create a facing. It's a little bit tricky. I probably need to give you a bit more information on that one. And then, yeah. So then what you end up with is a lining. If you imagine this is not stitched onto the main garment yet, you end up with a lining that looks something like this with your choice of facing. You don't have to do a facing all the way down. You could just do a smaller area. You could do an entire front top panel. You could not put lining in the front. If you were making this again and you knew the fit and you were happy with it, you could actually just make the whole front inside another 3 panels and make it its own quirky thing inside. There's so many different options. There's, yeah, lots of different things you could do. But that's what I chose to do for my lining yesterday, and we all did something similar. One of the ladies in the workshop actually just did a lining to about this point here because she didn't have enough fabric left. She wanted a particular color. That was what she had. So that's all right, because it's just going to turn out about that much if it does at all. And that's where most of your eye is going to see. If it's a little bit lining poking down further down, it's not that big a deal. The other thing you can do if you don't have a nice fabric for the facing is tuck your lining right back, and if it is coming forward and flapping around a bit, you can just ditch stitch it in this seam right through all the layers, and that will hold the lining in place as well. So then we come to joining the coat together, the lining and the coat together.
Okay.
So is it this?
Yes.
Like this?
Yes.
This, okay. Yes.
Do you want me to pin it to you?
There you go. Yay.
I love it.
Perfection. All right. Well, it is good, isn't it? The colours really does.
Mm.
Ouch. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Looks great.
Could you do it just on top of the helmet?
That would be hard to do precise because it'll be thick. It'll be on the velvet and
Yeah.
be on the
I think that
thing.
dark colours is quite nice.
It is quite nice, the chocolate. That bit.
It gives it a very different look. Put it on a tripod if you want. The very first thing that we need to check is, before we put the lining in, you want to get your 2 armholes. You've done a bit of this already. The armhole junctions and your side seams. And you just want to check that everything's the same length. And if it's not the same length, you just pick the shortest length and just go for it. The way across yet, you check your side seams and you also check your center fronts, because your center fronts have to be the same length as well. And you're going to do that on the main fabric as well as on the lining. So, and then once
So you've already put the lining in.
have on this.
Okay, so can you check it if the lining's not in or the lining has to be in?
No, so you would be doing it as 2 separate things. So your outer shell, you'll check your side seams are the same length, and you'll check your center fronts are the same length. Your back probably is, because you would have possibly trimmed it. If it's not, then you just trim that off as well. So once, if your center back's the same and your side seam's a little bit off, you might just want to have a look at it, put it on and just see, is it dropping at the back or is it okay? And then the same with the lining. Then you're just going to check the lining sides are the same, the center fronts are the same, because when we've sewn those facings on, sometimes the lining can shrink up a little bit. And then you want the overall length of the lining to be about 3 inches shorter than the body. Because what happens is we sew the 2 bottoms together and the extra length of the coat comes up like that. So once you know that everything's the same length, because you don't want to put the lining in and then have one coat, side of the coat's 2 centimeters longer or a centimeter no one would really notice, but you want to make sure that they're the same, and same with the lining. And then what you're going to do is get the 2 faced like right sides together, and you're going to sew a little bit of the bottom, about 15 centimeters of the lining, not forget this is done, just from the lining and the main body across the bottom. So if you just get the 2 fronts together and we're just going to sew this bit here.
The right sides together.
Right sides together. And what's going to happen is that the main body is going to fold up a bit because it's longer, and it will end up looking like that. Now the reason we don't sew the whole bottom together is because we need to still be able to get inside to do a lot of
Fiddling.
get the rest of it together. So once you've done both sides about 15 centimeters, then you're going to have your coat and your lining sandwiched right sides together, and we're going to pin the front edge. We're going to match the corners here. We're going to join the shoulder seams here, shoulder seam, here corner, and the front. And you don't have to sew it all in one. I did, but you don't have to. If you were worried about it, you could start at the center back and do the 2 both going. The purists would do that. With your fabrics, depending on, I wouldn't put the lining on the top. I would, I don't know, whatever fabric you put on the top is going to push along more than when you put your lining on the bottom. It really bunched up.
Yes, yeah, it did.
And you couldn't
gathered.
see that
Yes,
happening.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I would probably look at putting the lining on the top and making sure as you pull it out, you stretch it out as you go, you'll see it. So you'll be able to pull it out. You don't want, where I'm going with this is you don't want it to bunch up or anything, because we've got different fabrics all combined. You just need to be a little bit aware. And if you do sew this in one go and anything's off, by the time you get down the other side, you could end up quite lopsided. So I would suggest maybe, and before you do join the lining, put your neck label in the back, something like that. because it's much easier to do it now than later.
And can I say, those cups just turned back look great. Just
Oh,
the way
yeah.
the length.
Yes, yeah.
Almost just to turn a little hem on the body. You can't,
Yes.
because you've got to be seen, but they look good.
Yes, yeah.
Cup like that.
The other thing would be like the ribbon, like
Yeah.
I was to put.
Yeah.
But you've still got the seam.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
That's the next thing. So you also need to check your sleeve length because it's going to differ from person to person. My lining just happened to have been cut a bit shorter. I don't know how that happened. It just was. So I just sewed my two together because I didn't want to add anything onto the lining. But you want to try it on and make sure. So Robin needs to cut about 2.5 inches of her lining sleeve length
Shorter than that.
to get that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or you could cut a bit off that.
Yes.
So what you want to have is the length of your finished sleeve. You want it about an inch, or probably, I'm talking inches, but everyone gets inches, right? So you want it to be about 1.5 inches longer than your finished length, so it folds up to the inside and then just meets the lining.
Yes.
So if you were making a traditional tailored coat, your lining would be a little bit longer, but we're not.
Yeah.
Like with 2 days, we're not 2 weeks to do.
Yeah.
So that it's just going to be an easy fit kind of thing, and that will then turn your sleeve like this
Yeah.
when it's finished. So it's probably really hard to see that, isn't it? But that's the lining here and the inside of the sleeve rolled up. Okay. So what we will have now is you'll have your whole coat inside out. And I've done one sleeve already to show you, but it's going to look then like this. So your hem will be folded up and you'll be sewing the center front shut. It's probably easier to see it on that side because of the white. The neck will be stitched around. The seams will be matching here as well, around to here and down the front. Okay, then what you're going to do, because it's all still open down the bottom here, you're going to put it on the ironing board and you're going to press all your seams towards the lining, like with the iron, and then you're going to take it to the machine and you're going to, it's called understitching, and you're going to sew on the facing side, and it's going to be through all these layers of fabric. So yes, I'll show you one done. So I'm not sure you'll be able to see this here. There is a row of stitching here because I've stitched it in black. It's going to be really hard. It's about 2 millimeters across from the seam junction, and then you can see on the inside that second row of stitching. Because it's the same color thread, it's not perfectly straight. No one's ever going to see it. What this does is it makes that seam really roll, so the facing will really roll to the underneath.
Into where we want it to go.
Yeah. So then it's not really going to be flapping around. Yours being just lining, it's a bit flimsier. It may bubble through a bit, and if that's the case, what we'll do when we've finished is stitch in the ditch to hold it
Yes, yes.
where we want it. Once you've done your two fronts, you're not going to be able to get right up in the corner. You're going to probably be able to get that close to the corner. You're just not going to be able to get in there to do it, and the same at the bottom. Once you've done that, then you're going to go to your corner and you're going to trim the corner off, and you're going to cut into the
Cut some of
the
those.
neck. You would do that all around. You would do it on both corners. I've only done one at this point, and at this point you can decide based on the kind of finish that you want. Because this is a really busy fabric, what I will probably, you could understitch again, so you do the same thing, that all the seam allowance goes to the, but this is quite bulky and they're all quite bulky, so it's going to be still, it will probably still roll a tiny bit when you get to the corner. You can use your scissors to just push that corner out to a nice point. But so I've ironed this, but it's quite bulky in this seam. You can cut some corners off your seam allowance and things, but I will probably on this one, rather than understitch it, because it's not going to hold, that's not going to hold that kind of bulk, I will probably do a 1/4 inch stitch just around the neck, I think. Or when the whole coat is together, before I do that and all the seams are snipped, I could try stitching in the ditch here. That might be enough to hold it without top stitching, which on yours would be really nice because there's no other top stitching on the whole thing. So that would probably be enough to do it. When you when you stitch in a ditch along here, it's highly unlikely it's going to line up exactly with that. No one's ever going to see on the inside of the coat, so don't worry about it. There's always a bit of, you want to put it on the doll or on yourself and make sure it's all really nice and flat and make sure it's in the right spot when you're wearing it is more important than getting your inside stitching straight up, right on that line. Hardly ever works. So that will then take care of your front. It'll be all done and beautiful. Then what you're going to do is the sleeve. Now the sleeve is a bit tricky. It doesn't make any logical sense in any possible way. So what I do is I get my sleeve lining and make sure it's not twisted, and I get the 2 bits that I know need to be sewn together how they're meant to be when they're finished. So my seams are matching here, and my 2, whatever they are meant to be, like I get my, then I work it out so that I'm at the wrong sides where I'm going to stitch it. So I start with where they're supposed to be when they're finished, and then I go to how I'm going to stitch that, and I stick a pin in that, and then I go, oh, how the hell am I going to get there? You have to turn it inside out again, and pull the sleeve through. And what you actually do is you've got to get your right sides together like you always do, but the way that you do that is you make a tube.
Make a little bucket for it around here.
And then we're going to sew that, because it looks like you can't, but you can actually sew all around that. Now when you're cutting a whole lot off yours, 3 inches off, it might not fit exactly anymore because the sleeve's tapered.
Yes.
It will not matter if there's a couple of puckers where this joins, unless you're going to roll the sleeve up. No one's ever going to see it, so don't stress about it. No one's ever going to know or see it. If it is stressing you, you can narrow, widen, play around with it. But so when you do that like that, then that's going to pull through like this. So on mine, because it's got that stripe, I will probably put a stitch line somewhere through here. I'll wait till the other sleeve is done, make sure they're matching. On yours, I wouldn't. I would just leave yours with all that beautiful clean. I think there's enough going on with them that it doesn't really need that any kind of stitch, unless it was bothering you and not sitting. But once that's pressed, that's going to be all right, and yours has not really got anything else to distract from it. Once all that's done, the only thing left to do will be to sew the bottom closed. And to sew the bottom closed, before you do that, you want to just unpick a hole in the side. In the side seam, I'm gonna, like, it doesn't really matter how much it is. Don't make it too little, it's just a pain in the butt. And then you can grab all of this through that hole and sew your rest of your lining. So it's already started, the corner's already started, you're just going to sew all of that. What you want to do here, in some occasions your fabric might have stretched a bit or whatever, just keep joining it where the seams match. So see here, it's a little bit
at the joint.
At the join. Again here, just make it match. So the fabric that is the smallest you want on the top, and if you need to ease it in, just get some pins and ease it in and make those seams match up the whole way around, and then that whole bottom will be sewn shut, which is great. Then you'll pull it all back through, and then what we do with this is just get a couple of pins it will already be pressed neat and sharp like that because you've already pressed it open, and you're just going to sew a straight stitch like as close to the edge as you can, and it's in the side seam. No one's going to see it. If you wanted to, you could hand stitch it shut, but we do, that's how we do all the alterations. We just machine sew it down. You'll find most things these days that's how it's done. Every now and then you'll find blazers with an invisible zip in it so you can get in and alter it,
Okay.
but not very common. And then it's all done.
Voila.
Just
Voila.
like that.
Just like that. So
When do you have these?
one tip here, how to not get it twisted. I just got my sleeve lining twisted. Put your coat on with your sleeve like linings here, see, and pin the two right sides together like there should be. While you've got the sleeve on, then go inside. I did my one right yesterday, but I didn't finish it off. I came in today all guns firing and just wanted to get it finished, and I fucked it up. Anyway, now I can pull it through like this, and I am going to have everything in the right place. So what you need to do with the sleeve is get it inside out. I'm going to change the angle. So I found my pin there. My sleeves weren't exactly matching up, but at least I know I'm not twisted. I'm just going to pull all this mess out. Where did that all come from? Map up my junction with my right sides together. So you see here now I can fold that fabric to the inside and just stitch all the way around and get it right. Ta-da! All done. So to finish this coat off, what I did do after I pressed my neck was I did do some stitch in the ditch here to hold my facing. I also did the center back, this shoulder obviously. I stitched in the ditch on the end of my sleeves to hold them in place. I did stitch along here and along here as well to hold them in place. Now, what I would do in hindsight, if I made this jacket again in a stripe, I had a lot of trouble matching up this back seam here. So I would have cut this piece on the fold. This is not coat fabric. This is just quite thin fabric, which is a bit fun, but I really loved it and I really wanted to make a coat out of it. So I actually used some quilt batting on the front. I cut it in one piece. There's no seaming in the joins. I just cut it like we cut the lining. I also cut the back with that, and I really like the body that it's given. I did not cut the sleeves. I just put fusing on the inside of the sleeves because I thought that might be too bulky otherwise. Another thing I did was I strategically cut. I wanted this stripe and this stripe to come together on the front sleeve. I'm pretty happy with how that worked out. Coincidentally, at the back, look at that join there under the arm on both sides. I did not plan that, but how cool is it? The other thing I noticed, I was cutting this because it doesn't have a top and a bottom. The stripe runs like this on the fabric. I was able to fold pieces and cut them like this, which was handy because as it turns out, this stripe is not symmetrical. It's got more stripes on one side than the other. So it was more fluke that matched up than design. I wasn't sure about that until later in the thing. You could put like a hook and eye here if you wanted to. I quite like it really neat and clean. You could have put some pockets, patch pockets on if you wanted to. I didn't. Again, I really like this. This has got enough going on. It doesn't need, and I don't like side pockets. I don't like the bulk it adds for me here, but you can do whatever you like. That's an option for you. What else would I tell you? There are bits that are a bit wonky. This part has a bit of a curve that, because it's the bottom of the top, has a little bit of a curve. when you've got it on and you're moving around, no one's going to see it. If you were really liked things really perfect, that might bother you. But other than that, I could maybe have taken a bit of shaping in because it's got that quilt wadding. It could maybe have had a little bit of shaping in at the back, but like that's, no one's going to be looking at this and going, you should have shaped the back. They're going to just go, wow, that's a really eye-catching jacket. So I'm going to go now and put, I think, some black on underneath head to toe with maybe a really striking necklace and some black boots, and I'm going out for lunch today. See you later. Happy long weekend. Bye. Good luck with yours, and I'd love to see what you do with it.